Okay, back again. On the last one, I said I wanted to talk a little bit more about stability, so that's what this is. I've actually already done a stability exercise, but exercise podcast, but it was back in 4 years ago. So this is just a revamp. You don't have to go back and listen to that, but you can go and support the podcast. In fact, if you enjoy this, if you listen to it on Spotify, one thing that helps get out there is the reviews. So if you're enjoying this, if you're getting something out of it, feel free to share, feel free to tag, feel free to chuck a 5-star review. That helps us a lot. I'd really appreciate that. I don't really make sales on this podcast. I don't push any of the things that I sell. I never push the coach development or coaching or the products we sell. I just want to give out information, and if you're enjoying it, share the love. Anyway, let's talk about stability. Stability is probably one thing that's, the pendulum swung quite a few times. At one point, it was just like, this is weenie stuff. And then at one point, it was like, everyone should be doing this stuff. It's going to revolutionize your lifting. And I feel like these days it's back to being weenie stuff, but probably not in the sense of back then it was weenie stuff because everyone was calling it weenie stuff. Now, no one just really talks about it at all. No one talks about where the potential benefit is in understanding it, what it actually means, and how to integrate it into your training. And so where we need to start is a discussion on definitions, because if we're not talking about the same thing, if we don't have the understanding of what this word actually means and what the other buzzwords actually mean, then we're having a different conversation, right? And the really important thing, so stability, if you Google it, if you try to define it, it's going to say something along the lines of, resisting force, resisting external force. It's like if you're walking along and I push you and you stumble, your ability to stabilize against that external force is stability at that point in time. If I get you to stand on one leg and I try and rock you, your ability to resist that is stability. The issue when you try and apply that to lifting is you don't really have external forces acting upon you from different directions. You've only really got one, which is the bar and the gravity acting upon the barbell in your hands or on your back. And so we need to understand it as far as the term is actually defined with the things that we can control in our body when it comes to lifting. And it's going to encompass two trainable things. One is going to be motor control and the other is going to be strength. So motor control is literally your ability to control a position. There's a prerequisite to that. You need to be able to get in the position as well. So that's going to bleed into the concepts of mobility and flexibility as well. Strength is an easy one. That's just the output of the adaptations that our muscles make. You can just measure that by load on the bar. So resistance is strength. These are the two sort of trainable qualities. I know I've said you can't train strength, but you know what I mean. These are the two qualities that we're dealing with. So really, stability is a nebulous term to discuss what we can do with our body. So you don't train stability, rather you train positions, which is why it's such a nice follow-on from the previous episode. So let's talk about these two things, motor control and strength. Motor control, again, really it's motor control and scale. Motor control is the ability to achieve the position in the first place. And again, we need to have the adequate range of motion in the joint to be able to do that. You need to be able to physically get in the position before you can control it. Flexibility is an important thing to understand. Mobility doesn't have much of a place in our vocabulary, in our vernacular. It doesn't make a great deal of sense in the context of lifting. If you look through the studies, if you're that way inclined, you probably won't see much reference to mobility. That's because mobility is a literal term. It's literally the ability to go from point A to point B. So the mobility of your elbow is just the ability for it to move. And so the mobility is just that action rather than the distance that it's moving. So you can have mobility blocks, like you could have a spur in your ankle, you could have some sort of lesion in your hip that limits the range of motion that those joints can go through. But really what we're dealing with is flexibility, and flexibility is the passive range of a joint, right? And so, people will talk about stability or mobility being the active range of a joint, and that's just a fancy way of them packaging it according to that word. And again, this is why definitions are important, so we're having the same conversation. When I say flexibility, I mean the passive range of that joint. So can that joint actually go through the range of motion? If I lie you on a table and you're completely relaxed, how far can I lift your leg up? That's the passive range of your hamstring. That is the flexibility of your hamstring. This kind of opens the door into the conversation. Why are some people more flexible than others? So, of course, you're going to have like genetic components. There's going to be an element of that. But we need to understand what muscle stiffness actually is, what's going on there. And there are numerous ways. And I at the risk of oversimplifying it, I'm going to talk in a language that just makes sense to us as lifters and as coaches. So the stiffness that we get in muscles, it's not that the muscle is shorter than another muscle. So stretching it isn't lengthening the muscle. Stretching has a function, but it's you're not making a muscle longer or shorter. Like you can't make yourself taller by making muscles longer and then laxity in the joints and blah, blah, blah. What we need to understand with most issues with muscle tightness, and I mean like, oh, my shoulders are really tight, I have to do a bunch of stretching and quote-unquote mobilization to get under the bar to do a low bar squat. Now I can get under the bar and do a low bar squat. But then next time you come to squat again, you're in the same position. You have to stretch and mobilize to get under the bar to do the low bar squat. Why do we get caught in these cycles, and how can we break that cycle? That's what I'm more interested in this particular context. And so that muscle tone we receive is neural tone. That's a brain sending a message to those motor units saying, hey, we need to restrict this joint action. We need to stop that moving. Why does that happen? Let's look at it in the context of injury. Like you bust up your back doing a deadlift, you mess up your back, you bust a facet joint, whatever. Get a bunch of inflammation to the area, a bunch of neural signals saying there's pain here, this is bad. Stop doing that thing. That's your body's way of saying this is not good right now. Your body's very smart and it wants to protect you. So the other thing it does is send a bunch of neural tone to the muscles. This is where you get tightness. This is where you get spasming. This is where you get the muscles contracting because it wants to stiffen the area so you don't move in a way that then aggravates the injury that's there. This is what rehab is then. You do that, you've got a real stiff back, you've got back spasms, you've got all these problems, you go to a physiotherapist, what do they give you? Well, they give you some like deep core muscle activation stuff, some dead bugs, some Kegels, some whatever it is, getting multifidus and deep core muscles doing their thing. They give you some McKenzie extensions. They give you some Jefferson curls, get the joint moving. That rehab is your way, or a way to get the brain, to say, hey, we're actually allowed to move here. The danger is gone. We can use those muscles again. We can use that range of motion again. We can move through the range of motion. Those joints are safe to move now. It's okay. And then over time, your body's like, oh, it is okay. We'll let you have that movement back. Now, that's an extreme case of an injury, right? Why does it happen with our hips when we squat, or when we're shoulders when we're doing low bar bench press, our pecs when we're benching, whatever it is? Well, it's the same thing. It's just on a micro scale. It's trauma. It's like you're shoving yourself under this barbell in a position that you can't control and thrashing your shoulders. Your body's like, why the hell are you putting your shoulders there? Stop doing that. You're not going to stop doing that. Well, here's a bunch of neural tone to say, stop moving that. That's a bad idea. You're going to mess that area up. You're slowly messing it up. Stop doing that. But we're meatheads and we go, I want to do that. So I'm going to stretch and mobilize it enough to get under the bar and do it again. So then it raises the question, what is stretching actually doing? Well, it's very similar to the rehab that we just spoke about. The stretching is providing a temporary improvement in range. The stretching is telling your body, oh, you're allowed to be back here. It's okay. We're allowed to move back here. The strengthening, which will be the actual rehab exercise part, is often what's missing in the lifting context. So our shoulders are beat up, we stretch, now we can move. Then we just beat them up and the body says, fuck you, don't do that, and sends a bunch of neural tone. Then you tie it again, then you go through that cycle. So what needs to break the chain to fix this issue, which is tied up in this whole stability thing, is then strengthening the actual scale part, the strengthening part of the stability equation. You stretch, you regain movement, that's the motor control. Now you're allowed to get in that position. Now we need to scale strength in that position to the point where it can hold up under the loads that we're putting it under. That's why probably the hardest thing to fix in the context of muscles are tight, we need more range, is the shoulders for low bar squatting. Because often the disparity between somebody's ability to squat and their ability to control that position is gigantic. Like you might have somebody who can't physically get in that position for months before they can even afford to start strengthening it. And they're squatting like 300, 400 kilos. So then when they start strengthening it, they're doing it with the most pathetic weight, and it takes a long time. I'm talking maybe even years to get that area of the body to catch up. But that's the key thing that's missing here. It's like if you're struggling to hit depth because your hips are too tight. That might be true to some degree. So you need to open the range of motion by static stretching, and then you need to strengthen it by doing exercises in the right position through full range and scaling that up over time. That is the whole stability thing. It's, can you get in the position? Can you control the position? And then can you load it over time? And so most stability work then isn't little bended exercises. They might have their position. They might have their role. They might play a role to a bigger function. So back to the low bar squats, bad shoulders sort of example. And this doesn't matter if you're tight or loose. You might already have the range. You still need to strengthen it, right? You find the range, then you do these little banded exercises to improve the range. Yeah, sure. But then you need to start to scale that up. And so most of our stability training is actually just our regular training. It's just people don't think about it like this. Like, one of the best things that you can do if you are squatting high because your hips are quote unquote tight is to do leg press, hack squat, belt squat, machine squat, single leg, rear foot elevated split squats. Film everything you do and make sure you're going to adequate depth without compensation. So you don't just do a hack squat and sink it and bottom out the machine and say, hey, I'm now squatting to depth. Because if the only way you can do that is by completely rounding your back off the pad, it's going to make no difference whatsoever when you get under the squat. That's why if you can't squat to depth, the solution is not just go lighter and squat deeper. That's part of the solution. What's missing as part of that solution is squat deeper in the desired position without deviating from the desired position. If you deviate by completely rounding your back to get there, it's not going to hold up when you start to go heavier. You're either going to break or you're just going to start squatting high again organically. Most of the time, it's the second one. You don't just break that easily. Most of the time, you just get to a certain load and then start squatting high again. You can't just force yourself down there. So you have to create the range and then you have to strengthen through the range. That's really the ins and outs when it comes to stability. It's about understanding, what does this word actually mean? Okay, well, it's an umbrella term. It covers motor control and it covers the scale of that motor control under load. Most of what we do for stability then is in training. It is the leg press, the hack squat, the et cetera for the hips. And then you scale that down to a single leg version if you've got discrepancies left to right. When we're talking about the shoulders, it's the overhead press. It's fully locking out overhead press, going through deep range as far as you can with a row or through a lat pull down all the way down to the chest. Again, with the adequate, desirable positions without making compensations to get there. And if you're making compensations, you either need to go lighter in the weight, or you need to spend more time doing more aggressive stretching to open up that range. If you can understand that, most of the problems that you need to solve as far as technique and as far as lifting and as far as positions are pretty easy to solve. Pretty easy in concept. The difficulty comes in application, and the real difficulty for a lot of people just comes in the time investment. It can take a very long time, and so you have to be good at seeing micro improvements. Now, just on that to finish off, just while I think of it, this is the really hard thing to measure is those micro improvements. And think of it like this. If your hamstrings are always tight and you always stretch your hamstrings, the point that you take your hamstrings to stretch is the point of stretch. Like, you're not actually measuring most of the time how far your leg is coming back or how far your torso is going forward. You're just measuring the fact that you feel a stretch. And so with that, you kind of always feel tight. Like, your hamstrings always feel tight. It's not when you notice a macro change like, oh, 6 months ago I was 6 inches off the floor and now I'm able to touch the floor with my hands. You don't really see that happening on a millimeter to millimeter basis. So you have to understand exactly what you're trying to achieve, exactly how to achieve it, and then trust the process over a long period of time, because those micro changes are hard to see. That's why coaches are really great to guide you along that way. The other thing you've got on your side, just film it. You can measure it side by side, film in exactly the same spot every time. You can see these micro changes happening in real time. Hope that helps, and I'll catch you at the next one.